Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Literati. I'm your host, Joseph Ike, and today with me is Professor Audee T. Giwa. He's a professor of English literature in Kaduna State University. One of his books, Love in the Afternoon, is in front of me, and if you happen to have studied English literature anywhere in northern Nigeria, he is no stranger to you. This is just one of many books that Professor Audee has written. He's the recent recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award conferred on him by the Executive Governor of Kaduna State for his service both to English and, of course, to the development of the young creative minds in the space. Professor Giwa, you're very welcome on the show. We're honored to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming along.
It's my pleasure, yeah.
I think every aspect of your career, of your life, is worthy of note. And one of the things that really strikes me is something that you said during your acceptance speech of your Lifetime Achievement Award. Yeah. You mentioned that you actually taught yourself to speak English.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because you see, in my time, most Northerners go to school. I don't know how to put it, just like that, let's say. Mm-hmm. But most of those who went to school had some kind of background, either in the primary school, maybe their parents went to school, their parents were DOs, district officers, policemen. They had that orientation. Me, on the other hand, my father first, he was late before I was born. My mother didn't go to school. All my siblings, nobody went to school. So even when they put me in school, it was to fulfill righteousness. And because nobody was inspiring enough to me in the house, I was just going there. But by stroke of luck, when we did the common entrance examinations, I got admission. I don't know how it happened to today, but you see, this talking about destiny. Now, the interesting thing is that when I was in school, it was a secondary school, a boarding school, and during our time, that was 1975, there was serious case of seniority, corporal punishment in schools, and your senior is like your father. He can deal with you, anything. And they insisted that you should not speak vernacular. So now imagine how I will survive. I could not speak English, and I could not speak vernacular. And then the seniors were so wicked. Now, then I saw that some of my colleagues, my Form 1 students, were escaping them. So I asked them in Hausa, how do you escape these people? Then that was my first sentence in English, which I understood, was, I was sent. They taught me that sentence. That anybody who stops you, whatever they tell you, just tell him I was sent. This means that some other senior had sent you.
I see.
So effectively, this guy will not send you again. But I never knew the meaning of I was sent. But I became a master of I was sent, that even when you say what is your name, I'm likely going to tell you I was sent. It was that serious. Then along the line, of course, I suffered so much because of that inability to write or speak. And the suffering, honestly, is not for this place. So one day, the transformation now that you want to hear. Yeah. One day I was cleaning my brother's book. We call them brothers because actually they're called masters.
Okay.
They call them masters. Your seniors.
That's your seniors in school.
Yes, we call them masters. So sometimes we call them brothers. Then he asked me to sweep his locker, and I saw one book. And I literally stole it. It is very funny. My literary odyssey started by stealing somebody's book. It was a James Hadley Chase book. Even yesterday they mentioned it. And I now, maybe because the picture was just a naked woman or half naked woman, or because I was 16 or so.
Yeah.
So I just, this is nice. So I now read the book. Without understanding a single word, without understanding anything, I kept it. Even if I didn't want to read it, I want to look at that half naked woman. So I'll now read the book again. You see, why I'm saying this is important because various people have different inspirations for why they were.
Yes.
And if you're not able to tell yourself the truth, then forget it.
Yes.
So because of that particular woman, I refused to
get rid of the book.
Until I began to understand that this is talking about crime, talking about money, it's talking about, I kept doing it until I understood the book. I read like maybe 10, 20 times. And then all my people who knew that I could not write or speak were wondering what I was doing with the book. They thought it was a cover-up to belong.
Yes. So you pretending like, so you be like everybody else.
Like everybody else.
Yeah.
So one day, one senior again asked me to tell him the story of the book I was reading. Now that I didn't know then was the beginning. So I now told him what I understood. And as I was retelling the story of James Hadley Chase, it is called The Way the Cookie Crumbles. As I was telling him the story, I discovered that the areas I didn't understand, I was making it up myself.
Yeah.
I was not Chase, but I was speaking Hausa, don't forget, because the English was still not sound. So the senior was impressed. He said, okay, when you finish, I'll give you another one. That's how it started. And then because of my poor background, financially, academically, and all sorts, in the school I was always like from 1 and 2 second to the last.
So let me ask you this then. Do you think that even before you encountered James Hadley Chase, if you think back now at that time, do you think that you were always a good storyteller, even though it wasn't in English? Because when the prefect asked you, so tell me the story, you made up such a convincing story to fill the gaps of what you understood.
Yeah.
Would you say that you've always been a good storyteller, even without the English?
Can I correct that one a little?
Yes.
I was more like a story listener.
Okay.
You understand? Don't forget, I was very poor in primary school, very poor.
Okay.
Why was I poor? I had these sisters and elderly grandparents who are fond of telling stories. I would rather dodge school and go and listen to their stories. And I can hear one story a million times over. That was why I told you I read that book like 10, 20 times. I like repetition. I like to hear stories. So I didn't know then that thing was really having an impression on me. You understand? Because today, some of these women are alive. Very old, of course. Do you know that when I asked them, can you repeat that story? You told me this. Which story? That I tell you this story? Then I'll not stand and tell her the story she told me. God gave me that kind of memory. So I think that, my exposure to traditional storytelling at that age is actually one of the, without knowing it, prepared me for what I am today. And I think I was comfortable with that. And I didn't know that I could find stories in writing. Because the traditional folk tales, they were all over the place in our time. You know. So we never even thought that there was something novel like committing your story to writing. Then when we get older and we now understand the impeccability of the written word, we now superimpose it over the traditional African folktale.
And do you think that this gives Africans, all of us as Africans, maybe perhaps a unique advantage to creative writing, in the sense that much of it's so profoundly present in a lot of our cultures and traditions that storytelling is an exercise, a very normal communal exercise from East Africa to West Africa, from North to South. It's something we do, and like you said, we don't even think much of it. Do you think that if we do then look at the literary space or creative writing space, that maybe we do come from a place of unique advantage, given that cultural tradition or cultural background?
Definitely. The average African is not just in love with stories. He's not shy about telling them. He's not, how do I say, he doesn't feel shortchanged because his stories are being stolen by other people. He looks at you and says, oh, Ananse, in house I have Gizo. You understand? This thing they cut across everywhere. So by the time we saw the Ananse in Ghana, and then we saw the Gizo in Nigeria, or I saw the Emosutola's the score, we relate easily. And you see, I never subscribed to the notion that when I read Emosutola's Paman Drinkard, that he was writing a novel in rotten English. No, it was a fantastic story that told me what I knew, except that he was better than me because there is a book that looks like the story I knew. You know, so Africa has this tremendous advantage over others. Strangely enough, even in Europe, you see, there is one book I read by, I don't, Fanny Hill. What is the name of this writer? It's talking about the traditional folktales of the European people, English people particularly. And I was surprised to find that all of this that we call folk tales, they have their own brand of it. Now, this woman set out to make research and write a very voluminous book on the European folk tales. And there are so much similarities between the stories we told in our African context and the one they had. And the woman has never set foot on Africa before. Okay. So what I'm saying is that there's this literary ancestry that all of us share. All right. You understand? And in Africa, however, it gives us the strength to stand on our own, to say we are uniquely African. Our stories shape us. Our stories make us who we are. Our stories enable us to stand up and beat our chest and say, yes, I am African. If you have this kind of story in your place, come and tell me. Because if I narrate my own story from Nigeria, from Ghana, from Togo, from Benin Republic, from Niger, you'll be shocked to see that. Let them say whatever they want to say about religion. This thing unifies all of us together. And it's so beautiful that I wonder where the division comes from.
That's an interesting angle. We'll explore that angle more after the break. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll pick up the conversation where we're leaving off now, talking about how the literary arts unites us across borders after the break.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa first.
And we're back. So if you're just tuning in, we're with Professor Audee T. Giwa. We're talking about the literary arts around the African continent and how it has this cross-border uniting or unifying type of effect, because I like the way you put it. We have a rich literary ancestry. But let me ask you, we do have this ancestry, we do have these traditions, but Africa's remarkably underrepresented when it comes to published literary works. Why do you think that is? Given your experience, I mean, you've published a lot of books, but then would you say that on a global scale that we're keeping up with the demand or even the market for published literary works?
No, on a global scale, we're not anywhere. On a global scale. Yeah. You see, we are literally speaking like the fish in the well, who believes that he's the master of his domain. And the day you take him to the ocean, he discovers that he had no domain at all. While you are here, what you think, you write, what you do, you discover that you thought it's plenty. The way you go out and see what other people are doing with their own creative writing output, you wonder where you were. I was in the University of Essex one time when I was about to finish my PhD. And then I had a list of books that I wanted to see that I was thinking they were non-existent. When I entered the library of University of Essex, from 9 to 4, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., wallahi, all I was doing was reading books on the shelf. I was unable to carry one. Books that I never knew existed in the African text, on folktale, on folklore, they are just, in fact, after I left that library, I never entered it again. Because I was not there to look at books. My point is that they publish so much. You understand? And then the strangest thing is that I saw my book, I would rather die on that shelf. One copy selling for £7. At that time, it was 200 naira here. And how they got it, I don't know. When I told them I was done, they were even doubting because luckily for me, my picture was in one of the books. But you see, you can imagine my elation.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my discomfiture. Because how did these guys came to Nigeria and get copies of my book? And when I cannot even publish my own in my own country.
So why do you think that's the case then?
You see, what we call culture, they look at it as one exotic outlet for their experiment about Africa. They make you to believe that your culture is just there. You undermine it, you don't value it, then they come all the way to buy your books and go back and tell them this is the way you are living. So that what they interpret about your own culture is what they bring back to you, and you not appreciate it like that. Now, this is not the way it works. We should be studied. We should be seen as the cultural artifacts of our own culture, not what the white man said we should look at. I am grateful to the white man for teaching me English. I know how to get angry. I know how to abuse you now in English without getting you angry. Yeah. But really, really, when I go to see how he has done it, I am not too sure if we are yet ready to forgive him. You understand? But it helps us also to reach wider audience. You and I are communicating. Yeah. We don't know where the hell, sorry for the language, I came from, where you came from, but we are communicating. Yeah. So at least that's why English is good. Because if I was speaking my language only, maybe I would not be writing these books. Because if I would write it in my language, they would have said they had better stories from my grandfather. But because it is English now, so it's unique. So I think that what we have to do is to consciously awaken ourselves. The older people are there. The storytellers are there. The untellables are there. You see, if the white man is unashamed to tell lies against us, we are barbarians, we are sleeping on the trees, we are killing ourselves, we are cannibals, we are this. Why don't you come out and tell ourselves the truth? We are not debunking what they said. What is the truth is what is happening today. During my session, somebody asked me, don't you think these things you are saying are a bit offensive in the North? I said, just tell me what I said are lies in the North. To me, that is an offense. But so long as it is the truth, and I say it, I don't have any problems with that.
So you think that the writer actually does have a burden to narrate experiences as they are, to tell the story of life as it is? That's that's part of the role that's part of a contemporary writer these days.
It's our role.
How do your students take up this challenge? I mean, would you say that this is a challenge that young writers, young creative writers are willing to embrace?
Yes, not all of them have the guts that Abubakar Adam Ibrahim has. You understand? That when I look at that young man, I think I resemble his father. Because the boy is not afraid to tell it as it is. In the North, you don't write a book like Christian Blossom and say you have written a book. Somebody will just, before, there was this guy, you are carefree, just go to wherever you want to go. But today when we are talking, I told Kaderia when she asked me, I said, look, forget the sexual prevalence in my books. My primary audience, I have a girl of 16 in my house. Once I finish my writing, before I even go for proofreading, I say, Fati, come and read. She's the youngest, she's my outer. Then she'll say, Kai, Daddy, this one is too, how does she say it? Dirty. I just want you to, but I didn't ask you to explain, are you comfortable with it? Say, no, Daddy, people will not like this, meaning that there's so much sex in it. But if I'm able to do that with my own daughter, do I give birth to? Why should I be afraid to tell the world what is the truth? And I will say, is this happening or is it not happening? Say, Daddy, it's not happening, but they will say you are the one who said it. I say, thank you, my dear. Then we must be able to tell people the truth. It's not comfortable. Truth is never comfortable anywhere.
So we must be courageous enough to have uncomfortable conversations that come out of the work that we're putting out.
Luckily for us in Africa, it doesn't have that kind of dire consequences it used to have before. When they say they want to kill you for telling the truth. Because you are careful. You know they're not going to offend anybody's sensibility if it's religious-wise or cultural-wise. But when you tell people what they do, they can just get angry publicly and smile privately. This is the way I study it, and then this is the way I'm doing it. So you see, the what we owe to our cultures. We have daredevilry in our traditional stories. You have mischief making. You have people seducing other people's wives. You have all of those things, the African traditional folktales.
Folktales, yes.
You understand? Yes. So why is the folktale different from the book? Is this one more permanent? No, sir. The book is not more permanent than the folktale. Yeah. In fact, if the folktale was not permanent, you and I wouldn't have heard about it.
True.
You understand? So it's just a sham to say that because it's documented. Because the only thing you tell me now is that the competition for the written word is such that almost everything is ephemeral, even in writing.
How do you mean?
Ephemeral is because, okay, here is a book. You want to tell the story. Then tomorrow somebody will ask you, Audee, why is the e-copy of this book? Say, oh, I have it on my phone. Tomorrow somebody will say, oh, Audee, I see your own interview on Love in the Afternoon on TV. Then the after tomorrow somebody will say, oh, I saw you on YouTube. It's even livelier. And you are reading portion. You are diverted. There's so about one thing. The story you want to talk about, people are talking about in different media. So the reading thing is undermined. You know, so much so that if we're not careful, we're actually going back to folktale again. This is the way the Twitter, the Instagram, this is what they have turned into. Because every rumor, every unsubstantiated story, you cannot find it there. And that is why they call that term folktales. You know, there was a time folktale resembles lie.
Yes.
Somebody will tell you something that you don't believe, you say, no, that's just folktale.
So you think social media almost operates as a way of our going back to tall tale, folk tale, storytelling?
You will quote me. This is where we're going.
I see.
You see, when everybody is the manufacturer of story, everybody is a teller of story, everybody is an editor of story, everybody conserves his own story. Tell me why is the audience? You understand?
Yeah.
He wouldn't waste his time bringing the Bible and the Quran in their form. He just give you one Instagram and then give you one flash.
And send it as a tweet.
To everywhere. This is the way I look at it.
All right, we'll take a break, and then when we come back, we'll round up the conversation about some very common themes in your book: love, sex, family, and friendship. When we come back. And we're back. If you're just joining us, we've been having an exciting conversation with Professor Audee T. Giwa. Prof, sex is a big theme in your books. You don't shy away from it at all.
No,
and whether it is love related, whether it is just sex for sex sake. Tell us about this. It's something that is a bit unusual for a number of reasons. One, you're a writer from northern Nigeria. Two, you're a self-confessed conservative, although I guess you mean that more in the sense of the old school writing over new school. Three, you're an older man, so we would expect you to be more modest almost. I guess that's what society. But then you shun all of that and you say, no, I am going to have my sex scenes so elaborate that even my 16-year-old daughter will say, Baba, this is too much.
It's true.
Why?
Yeah, one thing I abhor in my life is hypocrisy in whatever guise. And then I grew up in a culture where certain things are not talked about. Then unfortunately, I see that the things that are not talked about are things that are often done. Now, you don't go about bringing up your children on the wrong notion that these things don't happen. Let them know that they happen. Let them know that the reality of the situation is this. And in any case, if sex is this bad, why is everybody talking against it? And yet doing it. You understand? So this is my own attitude to it. I don't look at the salacity aspect. I look at the necessity aspect. You know, it's not about encouraging you to be sexually oriented. No. It's about telling you that these things happen. And if you hear it from me, then you know that it's the truth. You understand? And then about being elderly, is because I'm elderly that I know that only the truth can set you free. You understand? We reach a level where we know the society, if they had choice, they will write us off somebody like me, I had been so much of a thorn in their flesh. You understand? Except for the literariness of my own orientation. They would have dealt with me a long time ago. By the way, I'm a tradition title holder.
Oh.
So we call the tradition sacrosanct. A chief is not supposed to even mention sex openly. Yet there is nobody that's having more children than chiefs. Nobody's having more wives than chiefs. You understand what I'm trying to say? So is that a hypocrisy?
Well, that's one way to look at it, because how are you having all these children?
All the kids.
And how
you
do
come
you
and tell me
keep
it's
all
a
these
taboo.
wives, and yet it's a taboo subject.
So that's one aspect. But the important aspect you must understand is that people love it. People love it, and people cherish it, and they value it. Sex is like blasphemy. You understand? You enjoy it when somebody else is doing it. Vulgarity is so sweet from another person's mouth.
Because they're speaking what's in your mind.
Yeah. If somebody says, you say, this guy is going to hell. You are not going, but if he says it, it's fine. So why will we be pretending like this? Let's call a spade, and then let the children take care of what they're going to do. So this is one aspect of sexuality. And then, like I said, since I know that people love it, nobody has sanctioned me. Nobody has. I wrote one of my books in Saudi Arabia. The only thing that stopped me from doing was, don't put a woman's cover. You see, let me tell you the intellectual nature of the society. So long as the cover is not a woman, the content can be anything. And I was smart enough to understand that. So all my covers have women on them, but in Saudi Arabia, I put a sellotape, masking tape, duct tape, and block everything. And this is the way we got it done. So there is nothing wrong as far as I'm concerned with that. And then another thing is, don't forget, to educate people, you need to entertain them.
Yeah.
I mean, right from classical times, from Greek, Aristotle, Plato, everybody, we all understand that art has the power to be a therapeutic element and educational element. Yeah. You understand? So this hedonistic aspect, this pleasure-giving aspect of art is the one that people silently cherish. You understand? This is what gives them pleasure secretly. So when you're going to educate them, and you know that the sex is what is educating them, by all means give it to them. You understand? Then through that, you can now educate them.
So it's an interesting viewpoint. It's saying that the argument that no, we shouldn't put this out there because it would corrupt the children doesn't really hold water, because in your mind, it's all around the children anyway. And whether you write it or whether you don't write it, they're exposed to it. The only difference is in talking about it, you allow them ask questions. Yeah. And in asking those questions, then there's a possibility of educating them. So if we're not talking about it, no one's really getting educated on this thing that is happening. And then it's just where the word you use for it is more of hypocrisy. It's an interesting viewpoint to it. And Professor, we thank you for all the years that you've stayed provoking us, making sure that we say it the way it is.
It should be said.
And most importantly, for teaching so many new generations about these hard truths, and the job of a writer to in fact be that provocateur, to tell it to us like it is that we want to hear all across Africa. We say thank you so much, and thank you
very
for
much
being
for having
with
me
us on Literati today.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you too for joining us for today's talk. See you again next time, same time.